Hello everyone, hope all of you are doing good. I have not recorded any video for some time, so I'm here with a new topic. I'll be starting a new series where I touch on Owasp Top 10. Owasp Top 10 is a research-based document that raises awareness among developers, organizations, and security professionals on the most critical security risks faced by web applications. The last release was in September 2021. So let's continue. OWASP, or Open Web Application Security Project, is an international non-profit organization dedicated to web application security. One of the core principles is that all their material will be freely available, easily accessible on their website. That makes it possible for anyone to improve their own web application security. The materials they offer include documentation, tools, videos, and forums. And perhaps the OAuth Top 10 is their best known project. I have provided a link, a reference link in the footnote. OAuth Top 10 is a documentation of the most critical security risks to web applications. What you see on the screen is like broken access control, security misconfiguration, software and data integrity, and security logging and monitoring. This report is put together by a team of security experts all over the world. OWASP refers to the top 10 as an awareness document, and they recommend that all companies incorporate the reports into their processes in order to minimize or mitigate security risk. Okay, let's start with the first vulnerability listed under OWASP top 10. That's broken access control. Before we proceed, we need to understand what is access control. So, access control is a fundamental security principle that regulates who or what can access a resource, which can be anything from physical spaces like buildings or rooms, or digital assets like files, applications, and network. The primary goal of access control is to ensure that only authorized individuals or systems can interact with certain resources, while unauthorized entities are prevented from accessing them. Within access control, there are three mechanisms. First is authentication, that is the initial step in access control process that verifies a user's identity through like passwords, biometrics, multi-factor authentication. Then comes in authorization, that comes after authentication. Hence, once the user is identified or verified, authorization defines what actions or operations the authenticated user is allowed to perform. So it's more like a permission. The third one is enforcement, which is a practical application of access control. It ensures that the defined policies, permissions are actively enforced during the interaction with resources. This includes granting access to unauthorized access and denying access to unauthorized access. Then, in order to understand broken access control, it is defined as improper enforcement of restrictions on what authenticated users are allowed to do. It allows attacker to gain unauthorized access to functionalities or data within a web application. Attackers could access, modify, or delete sensitive data, perform unauthorized actions, or even escalate privileges. In order to mitigate, we can follow the principle of least privilege, deny by default. We also ensure that the sensitive data is not stored with the root partition. Even we also limit to the access or the server directory listing. So these are the key things how you can prevent it. I have also included a link down below in the footnote for you to have further reading. Thanks. So the second item listed is cryptographic failure. Cryptography, which is used to ensure data confidentiality, integrity, authentication, and non-repudiation. The key thing is if you have a cryptographic failure, you could have data breaches, unauthorized access, data tampering, man in the middle attack, eavesdropping. And the reasons for a failure could be a weak key generation, a poor key storage, key leakage, or key usage. Before we move forward, need to understand what are the method of cryptography. So you have encryption, that is like transforming the original representation of information, that could be a plain text, into a ciphertext on unreadable text. Similarly, when you do the reverse of encryption, it is called decryption, which is converting a ciphertext into a plain text. There are two types of encryption. First is symmetric, which is more like a secret key which is shared between both the parties. It is used for encryption and decryption. Then you have asymmetric key, which is used for the public key cryptography, which is a pair of public and private key, while public key is used for encryption and private key is used for the decryption. So the logic is you can't use the same key for both the purpose. Then comes in hashing. It is more of a technique that is used to generate a fixed length. That is like you provide an input or data input that converts into a hash value, and that is irreversible. So it's a one-way function. Then comes in digital signature, which is more towards the authenticity and non-repudiation, wherein you sign any document with your private key, and then the public can be used to confirm that the user who has signed it, they can't do a repudiation of that. So it's a non-repudiation. While how to prevent it, it's a very good point, and it's kind of a key thing these days. So try to encrypt all your data in rest. So whenever you are storing anything, just ensure that the data is secure. You have using robust algorithms which can't be hacked. Uh, we don't have anything such as cannot be hacked, but yes, it takes more time, more duration. So make use of robust encryption algorithms, keys, and protocols. Also, the data in transit from one point to another, make sure that you are using the latest protocols like TLS 1.2 and above. Identify strong security controls for all your sensitive data. You can secure your databases, you can secure your files, those containing sensitive data, the PII, PHI. Okay. And the key thing is only collect the data which is absolutely necessary. So that's the key point. Okay. Similarly, I've added another footnote with a link for your future reading or further reading. Thanks a lot. So the third type is injection. So a code injection happens when an attacker sends invalid data to the web application with the intent of making it do something that the application is not designed to or programmed to do that. There are different kind of injections like SQL injection, command injections, cross-site scripting, XML injection, LDAP injection, and code injections. And they all lead to similar data breaches, malware injection, system compromise. In order to prevent it, the input validation on the server side is very important. On top of that, you should have intrusion detection system which can spot on to the suspicious behavior, use a parameterized queries, avoid special characters, and also limit the SQL controls within queries. So that's the key thing for any kind of mass disclosure. Similarly, I would say the core of code injection vulnerability is lack of validation and sanitization, which is done by the web application. And it is one of the well-known attack. Uh, so if you want to do further reading, you can follow the link given below. Thanks. Okay, so the next one is insecure design, which is a broad category representing different weaknesses expressed as missing or ineffective control design. Insecure design refers to a situation where a system, application, or a product is created without proper consideration for security, leading to vulnerabilities and weaknesses that can be exploited by attackers. So, as a software developer, they have the responsibility to create a secure application so that the users are not at risk. So, they should have a mindset as secure by design. The reasons for failure is lack of security consideration. We don't have threat modeling in place, or we don't use them. Use unsecure default configuration, inadequate testing, poor architecture, then ignoring security best practices, rush development or meeting tight time deadlines, and inadequate training and awareness among developers. The best way to prevent, or the common ways to prevent these kind of situation, is to tightly integrate security as part of the SDLC at the early stages of the planning. Along with that, use secure libraries, a framework which are well known. Also have threat modeling in place. I could give an example like Stride and Red. I will include or I would suggest you guys to go through with the threat modeling options. And one of the key thing is you can actually avoid exposure and then do the protection by using app tiering. So that means you can have a different tiers of within the application itself, or you follow the multi-tier architecture. So I've included the link for secure design, so you can actually take a look. Yeah, thanks. Next one in the list is security misconfiguration, which refers to improper or inadequate configuration of security settings, controls, or mechanism within an application, system, or network, leaving it vulnerable to attacks or exploitation. The failures or the reasons for failures could be insecure default settings, misconfigured firewalls, inadequate access controls, unsecured communication protocols, misconfigured encryption, unpatched vulnerabilities, inadequate network segmentation. And the way it can be prevented is via proper configuration and testing, regular security audits and assessment. You can perform a vulnerability assessment to identify any weaknesses in the system, pre-configure templates, remove unused features, and regularly patching and updating your configurations. Vulnerable and outdated components. So these vulnerabilities arise from unsupported and outdated components, softwares, libraries, frameworks. Building or using these applications without latest updates version can leave it open to attackers. And the reasons for failure could be pace of the update. You have a legacy code that's not going to work with the newer version. You're scared of doing something or performing that will break, or you might think it will break the website, or you don't have expertise to properly apply the patches or the updates. The way to prevent is to have an inventory of all your components. You can perform a software composition analysis, also validate if you have removed all your unnecessary dependencies, which can also be part of the software composition analysis, or you can work with your software developers. Refer to the National Vulnerability Database. They give you a scoring that can help you to identify whether it's a high, medium, low, critical, what kind of vulnerabilities with the scoring. Also obtain or always obtain components from the official sources, and also delete any components which are not being actively used or maintained. It's one of the very important aspect, especially when it comes to updating and patching your components. So keep that one in mind. Thanks. Identification and authentication failures. A broken authentication vulnerability can allow an attacker to use manual or automatic methods to try to gain control over any account they want in a system, or even worse, to gain complete control over the system. Websites with broken authentication vulnerabilities are very common on the web. Broken authentication usually refers to logic issues that occur on the application authentications mechanism, like bad session management, user enumeration, when a malicious actor uses a brute force technology to either guess or confirm valid users in a system. So typical failures or the reasons for failures are: you have permitted defaults, you have a weak or a well-known passwords, insufficient credential recovery, like forget my password. So these are quite not well defined, or you're missing an ineffective multi-factor authentication, or you have exposure or you have exposed your session IDs within the URL. So the best way to prevent all this is to use multi-factor authentication. So when I say multi-factor authentication, it's different authentications used in together. Similarly, try avoid using default credentials, especially for admin privileges. Always have a strong password policy. Deploy a secure session management that generates limited time or session IDs. I've attached a link for further reading, so that will be much more helpful for you guys. Thanks. Number 8 is software and data integrity failures. It refers to a situation where software or data is modified, deleted, or corrupted, either intentionally or unintentionally, compromising its integrity, accuracy, and reliability. It can occur because of unauthorized access or tampering, insecure code practice, poor data validation or sanitization, inadequate backups, insufficient testing, any malware or ransomware attacks, human error or accidental changes, or inadequate security controls or monitoring, which can actually lead to intellectual property theft, loss of business continuity. In order to prevent it, you should have more focus on secure coding practices, robust access controls, regular backups, intrusion detection systems, secure data storage, regular security audits, employee training, third party, continuous monitoring and logging, incident response and planning. And that is kind of the one thing which can help us out. Thanks a lot. Security logging and monitoring failures. 100% security is not a realistic goal. There are always ways to keep your website monitored on a regular basis. This allows you to take immediate action when something happens. So, not having an efficient logging and monitoring process in place can increase the damage of a website compromise. The typical reasons for a failure could be auditable events such as login, failed logins, high value which are not logged. The warnings or errors are generated but not have sufficient or they have unclear log messages. Applications cannot detect, escalate, or alert for attacks in real time, and logs are always stored locally. To prevent it, we should have enforced security controls that prevent tampering of log data. It should not be accessible by all. On top of that, you can use a technology called WORM, write once, read many. Uh, it's going to be uh, straightforward to use a readily available logging and audit software. For instant detection, you can also use a SOC, Security Operations Center, that can manage near real-time monitoring for you, that can alert the administrators or the security analyst, and then they can immediately take any action. Also, all these SIM solutions can be used because they actually contextualize and then they also help you to understand and do a aggregation correlation and normalize the logs for your investigation. The last one, server side request forgery, known as SSRF. It's a flaw whenever a web application is fetching a remote resource without validating the user supplied URL. It allows an attacker to force the application to send a crafted request to an unexpected destination, even when it is protected by a firewall, VPN, or any other type of network access control list. The failures or the reasons for failures are improper validation of user URL, insufficient access control, misconfigured APIs. The way to prevent is enforce user input validation and sanitization, have a list of allowed ports, destinations, and URL, always disallow HTTP redirections, block any unwanted traffic that is denied by default. So, with this, we close or cover all the 10 uh, key vulnerabilities or the risk, I would say, as part of the Owasp. To sum up Owasp Top 10, it is a widely recognized list of most critical web application security risks. This list is not exhaustive and new vulnerabilities keep emerging regularly. So stay informed, prioritize secure coding practices to minimize risk. Thanks everyone. So I've also included the key resources I've referred for creating this presentation and this video. So maybe you can go through this and then you can have more clarity of things, or you want to deep dive how things are structured, what is the use of a OWASP top 10, and then how it is used by different vendors for their product development. Thanks for listening and hope it has been informative. Wish you all good luck and keep learning. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.